Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be, and welcome to a video on science education. It's called Lost Narratives. Unbeknownst to the pre-internet generation, a tectonic shift in the way science is taught has occurred. It involved a shift from lectures to hands-on learning. And this shift was reported back in 2014 in the magazine Scientific American. And it was portrayed as a really good development, an improvement in science education. A development that would teach students to practice the scientific method rather than just hear stories about it. But from someone who comes from a pre-internet generation, this sounds a little strange because pre-internet science education always included a hands-on laboratory element in the curriculum. But the lectures were essential to understand the background and history of what was being done in the laboratory. This makes me wonder what they were trying to change and what sort of efficiencies they were trying to improve. Did they get rid of the lectures as a cost-saving method or an effort-saving method? Were the lecturers replaced with associate professors who earn minimum wage, as is often the case in the United States university system? Did the lecturers forget the stories that used to be told and drawn on a chalkboard? Was it simply too much effort to remember them and pass them forward to the next generation? Or did they not have enough time allocated for this because they had been given too many other jobs? Have these lecturers fallen back on PowerPoint presentations copied from a textbook? Were the students no longer able to concentrate on a lecture for an entire hour? Has the internet reduced people's attention spans to that of, for example, a 10-minute YouTube video? Has the internet, or will the internet, replace the lecture hall, at least in the short term? And what will this do to the oral tradition of physics? Will certain stories be lost? Does our education system already consist of primarily the Googling of YouTube videos and the running of MathCAD computer simulations provided by PhD students? Because if this is the case, I think students today need to know that people from the pre-internet generation got rather different educations, and I'm seeing evidence of this when I try to engage with millennial students and people with PhDs about what they understand, and I'm finding that our educations were somewhat different. Because when you learn about physics primarily via MathCAD computer simulations that you may copy or read from somewhere, the lesson gets condensed to see the equations work. Job well done. Go home and play some video games. It doesn't force you to construct the sort of narrative that the professor has to construct when they deliver a lecture. I think there's a difference in the sort of lesson that is absorbed. And I think that switching to hands-on computer simulation education is not a good development because there is an oral tradition that has been passed down from lecture hall to lecture hall throughout time. And if we replace that with online tools, we are in danger of losing that tradition. I recently saw an older scientist quoted in an article by, she said, "Pay attention. Someday you may be the last one who remembers." And she may have been repeating this as a quote she'd heard an even older scientist say. But today I can't remember her name or find her on Google easily. Perhaps my short-term memory has atrophied due to internet dependence. My long-term memory is still pretty good, but when I tell some of the stories I learned in a lecture hall 20 years ago, I'm discovering that in a crowd of post-internet millennials, I am often the last person who remembers those stories. In fact, many of them think that the stories I tell about subtle matters of interpretation are fake news, and they will ban me from their subreddit forums. I was born right at the tail end of Generation X and only started using the internet a little bit when I was about 20 years old. Even then, I didn't start using it to replace my memory with Google until I was about 25. I find that my most vivid memories and narratives come from the time before I started using the internet. And I wonder if this is true for other people as well. I want people to take a look at the narratives we may be losing because of the internet. There are things you can only understand in narrative form, and there are oral traditions that must be written down before they are lost forever. That is one of the reasons that I started writing this blog. I am trying to record the physics stories that I remember from lecture halls I sat in 20 years ago. And I may have given them a new interpretation from my experience in the laboratory doing actual work in physics. But I think these stories, I'm discovering that I'm the only one telling them in some cases. They may be buried in some old books, but I don't know how to find those anymore, and I don't know if other people know how to find them either. This is also probably the reason that I began to write fiction. There was a narrative within my memory that required the medium of fiction to sort itself out. And that is probably why my novels are centered around a theme of lost or manipulated memories. A theme that I think will resonate with people in today's post-truth climate. Thank you for watching. I hope you tune into some of my other videos. The last two were on my memory of quantum mechanics education, more of the narrative component, not just the derivations. So there's a layer of the education composed of narrative, which stitches together all of the individual derivations into a larger picture, and that is the part of education that I worry could be lost. So until next time.